Hello, I'm write-in presidential candidate Chance White from the great state of Idaho in a three-part series in which this is the third part. In our last session, I talked about immigration. Today I'm going to talk about religion and a couple other items. I'd like to read something to you before I start. It's Patrick Henry's statement. No free government or the blessing of liberty can be preserved to any people without a frequent recurrence of fundamental principles. And that's how I'd like to start this last episode. The fundamental principles of religion, of spiritual beliefs. Founding fathers were very much aware of the importance of such beliefs when they did the framework of our Constitution. All our leaders, like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, somewhere along the line they recognized the existence of a divine creator and the important role that he played on the blessings of this nation. And to be true, this nation has received the blessings of God for a great number of generations. But sadly, as we know, about 5 decades ago, a little bit more, we started to lose ground on the importance of those spiritual beliefs. Now, some of you out there may not agree, and I get that. It's okay. Because you see, the God that I believe in allows for free will. He doesn't want robots serving him. So you may not believe in the existence of God. You could be an atheist. Atheism could be your God. That's all right. Everyone in America has freedom of religion. You do choose whether you believe or not. So those of you listening who have no desire to hear about God and religion, I apologize. But it's a subject that can't be dismissed, and if I, as a candidate running for presidency, were to fail to mention my spiritual beliefs, I believe that I would not be totally honest with you in the picture of who I am and what I stand for. When you hire somebody in a position that's as honorable as the presidency, I believe that someone like me or any other candidate should fully disclose what his spiritual beliefs are or not, if he's an atheist or not. And why is this? I believe that a man cannot, or a woman, cannot make decisions that affect the nation without reflecting on his spiritual beliefs. Now, currently, we have a president who has a habit of mocking the Bible. I've seen it a couple times now on TV, in the sense of what passage should he refer to for advice about how to deal with the Afghanistan war. Should he turn to Leviticus or maybe Exodus? That attitude, that mocking, does not come from a Christian, although he claims to be one. Any Christian who's ever studied the Word knows somewhere in those 66 books, an application of what's going on today can be found. But that's not the point that I'm trying to make. The point is that I do believe in a divine creator. And I do believe that the man known in the Greek as Jesus was his only begotten Son that died for us on that cross. Whether you choose to believe that or not is irrelevant. What is relevant is the fundamentals, like Patrick Henry was talking about. The fundamental principles of Christianity. If you remove that name, Christianity, you would discover that those people that we call today humanists follow much of those same principles anyways. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Obviously, you don't want anybody to steal from you, do you? You don't want anybody to be stabbing you or shooting you or running over you with their truck. And you don't want anybody raping your daughter or your wife or burning your house down. And certainly, if you wouldn't want anyone to do that to you, you wouldn't want to do that to anybody else, would you? At least you shouldn't. Fundamental principles. Even a Buddhist. Many people like the Dalai Lama and what he stands for. Oddly enough, some of the things that he teaches comes right out of the mouth of the Lord that I serve. Love is the greatest gift. And if we treat our neighbors with love, well, we wouldn't have any wars, would we? But that's not the human way. That's not the basic instincts that sometimes override common sense. The nature of the beast has a habit of rearing up from time to time. So why am I talking about religion? Whether you're a Baptist or a Protestant, or a Wesleyan, or a Mormon, or a Lutheran, Presbyterian, Catholic, the one thing that we all hold in common is this: that Jesus is the Son of God and he died for us on that cross. There's no debate about that, at least not within those religions that we talked about. I must make an exception, Mormonism. Not all Mormons believe that the death of the Lord on the cross was relevant, that he suffered in the Garden of Gethsemane, and that's where the sins were forgiven. I failed to mention that, sorry. But then we have religions that don't recognize that Jesus did that. And so there's conflicts. There's always debates about this and that about the Bible, and the Jews have different views. They recognize Jesus, but they don't see him as the Messiah, except for the Messianic Jews. They do. Now, why is this important? What has this got to do with being the President of the United States? Well, you see, most religions have no impact other than the spiritual belief system that an individual follows. But there came along a time, some six decades ago, a woman approaches the government and says, I don't think my child should be subjected to prayer in school. I don't believe in that God, and neither does my child. Why should I be subjecting my son to this belief system? I don't think he should be forced to pray. Well, the child didn't have to pray. All he had to do was be silent, so he wouldn't be rude to those who did have that belief system. But the woman pressed the issue to the point where our nation's leaders gave in. There's a phrase that's used sometimes: do not repay evil with evil. In my mind, the government repaid evil with evil. Evil came to the government leaders and said, why should my child be forced to pray in school? And our government leaders repaid that evil with evil by saying, you know what, you're right. We're so sorry that your individual rights are being violated. What were we thinking? And so prayer was taken out of school. For those of you who are atheists, you don't really care, right? That's all right. That's fine. But for those of us who do believe, we see a significant change. You don't see it right away, but for every action, there's a reaction. And in this case, fast forward 6 decades. What do we have? We have some of the most violent and horrendous crimes ever to be committed in our history. Case in point, Casey started right here at Pocatello High School in the state of Idaho. Butchered by 2 of her fellow classmates in such a manner that defies description, and they videoed it. That's just one story of many. Only evil could do that. A lot of things that are going on in our nation, the morality, the value system of our younger generation, the values that our grandparents or great-grandparents passed on to us, the going to church on Sundays, all these things that were important to Americans when Christianity ruled. We have a president who declares we're not a Christian nation, we are a nation of multi-religions. That statement wouldn't have been made ever 5 decades ago. But it was now, in our lifetime. A lot of things happening in our lifetime now would have never been made back then. Why? Because Christianity has been removed. And the majority voice of Christians throughout our nation has been silent. Some might say that's okay. I don't want to hear about religion. No one should tell me what to believe or what not to believe. That's true, because we're a nation of freedom of religion, freedom of speech. So why am I bringing this up? Well, supposing I went to Congress. I'll give you an example. I'm the guy who wants to push the system. I'm the guy that wants to find the boundaries of exactly what can I do as a citizen if I want to find out what exactly are my freedoms here. And I go to Congress and I say, you know, I believe my rights are being violated. I cannot worship the way I want to. Really? Why is that? I want to worship Molech. Molech? Yeah. It's an established religion. It's the god of the Canaanites in the Bible. And since the Bible's recognized as an authority on religions, therefore you must recognize my religion. Ah, well, okay. Far be it from us to keep you from, worshiping your God. What's the problem? Well, you see, as a worshiper of Molech, I need to build this fire. And I need to have drummers. And I need to take babies and I need to toss them into the fire pit as the drums beat. And I need to do this so that my crops that I try to grow every year will be plentiful. If I don't, there's a danger of my crops not being able to grow. Such is my belief in Molech. Well, you can't do that. Why not? Well, you can't kill babies. It's against the law. So you're going to deny my practice of my religion just because it involves killing babies? Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, seek help. You need it. Really well off the wall there for an example, but bear with me. There's a point to this. There's a religion out there in our nation called Islam. Muslims have a Bible called the Koran. And in that Koran, which I've read, there are surahs or chapters that promote the killing of infidels. That would be you and me if we didn't believe in Islam. Christians and Jews are their main targets. Their first hatred is towards the Jew, and Christians are the next follow-up. Now, as a nation that promotes freedom of religion, you will find that there are mosques throughout our nation. These mosques are so Muslims can go there and worship. And many of you would say, well, it should be allowed to. The moderate Muslims aren't the problem. It's those fundamentalists, those radicals. Well, I stress the word fundamental. The fundamentals, like Patrick Henry earlier, that I was speaking of. In Islam, the fundamentals is the Quran and their Sharia law. Now, historically speaking, if you do the research, you don't have to take my word for it. It starts with a few Muslims coming in, they're peaceful and they're nice and they're polite. So there's no problem. They keep to themselves. But as their numbers grow, so do their demands. Their demands grow, their mosques grow, their numbers grow. And again, their demands grow. And when their demands aren't met, their tempers grow. Next thing you know, you've got cars burning and tires burning and riots being made. Today we have Muslims that actually submit requests to our government so they can burn the American flag. You know, freedom of speech, thanks to our illustrious Supreme Court justices. They have surmised that freedom of speech is to include the symbolic gesture in a political sense of the word that burning the American flag falls under the category of freedom of speech. So the Islamists, the Muslims, are allowed to do that in demonstrations. Now, I don't know about you, but it doesn't settle well with me. It doesn't settle well with me that the Supreme Court justices have ruled it's freedom of speech. Burning that American flag, that national icon, the one that represents our men and women in uniform that shed their blood so that we can have the freedom to speak our mind, to assemble peacefully, and all those other Bill of Rights that we so richly enjoy. And now to include Muslims burning American flags. Does not set well with me. Maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I should have a more open mind, a progressive mind. Maybe I should enter interfaith dialogue with the Muslims. Interfaith dialogue, interesting concept. That would mean we'll just sit around here at a table and we'll just talk about our different religious beliefs and we'll shake hands and walk away. And we'll accept each other's beliefs because we're in the land of the free and the home of the brave. This is America. I'm here to tell you that this is a clear and present danger, such as the Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes spoke of long ago. At least I believe it is. And this is just one man's opinion, one American's voice being heard, hopefully not falling on deaf ears. Islam is a theocracy. They don't separate their religious beliefs from their government. Their Koran, or their Bible, if you will, promotes the killing of Christians and Jews, infidels, if you will. If you're okay with that, because you're going to convince yourself, well, that's just a misinterpretation, try reading that Koran. Go through the surahs, the chapters. Read them all. And when you're done, you come to me and you tell me, well, I read it, and I still think it's just a misinterpretation. I don't think so. It's very clear what it promotes. There is no misinterpretation. And the Koran that the moderate uses, it's the same Koran that the radical uses. And that word fundamental, it's fundamental because it's basic Koran, 101. Now you may think that this particular thinking might fall under the category of Islamic phobia or xenophobia, if you will, or racism, hate speech. No, I don't hate the Muslim. I don't hate my enemy. My Lord teaches me to love my enemy, and I will pray for them that their eyes are open to the truth and they'll convert to Christianity. But that's my spiritual beliefs. That's my personal spiritual beliefs. As an American, which should concern you more, I fear for the security of my nation. Islam is a version of our Constitution. They may tell you that it's compatible, Sharia law and the Constitution, but when you read those surahs, you're going to come to a part where it says it's okay that you can beat your wife. I don't think so. I don't think any women that would read that would agree. I have a problem with that. You should have a problem with that. You see the inherent weakness of freedom? The system is designed so someone like Islam can move in and do their thing unhampered. I can tell you as a matter of fact that there are Muslims in our government positions, leaders in our Senate, at least 2 of them. There's one that's the advisor, Homeland Security. There's one that's a personal aide to Hillary Clinton. Maybe in your neighborhood, your police chief is a Muslim, or your mayor. You don't know, because you see, Muslims don't have a particular skin color. They don't have a particular gender. Anyone who picks up the Koran and believes in it and follows its teachings is a Muslim, and they follow Islam. It's not limited to gender or skin color. Therefore, not racism is what I'm talking about, not hate speech. Is it hate to recognize who your enemy is? Would I be called a racist or a hate monger if I were to speak out about Adolf Hitler prior to World War II? No, it's called common sense. Would you sleep in a cage with a lion that's hungry and expect to wake up in the morning all whole and healthy? Even if it was a tame lion, eventually that lion's going to get hungry and you're going to be at its next meal. I can't believe that our government leaders are not aware of knowing who their enemy is. I don't promote violence. I'm not talking about going out and shooting your Muslim neighbor. I'm talking about awareness. I'm talking about knowing who your enemy is and being prepared. The fact that we allow mosques in our nation is beyond me. But then again, I'm Chance White. I'm just an individual. One man's opinion. I see a threat. It's clear and it's present. Cultural jihad. No swords, no guns. You just wake up one morning and those making decisions happen to be Muslims now. They're not Christians. They're not Jews. They're not atheists. Muslims. Constitution is now the Sharia. And if you're not familiar with that, I suggest you get familiar with it real quick. Raise your voices. Let your demands be heard. Let our government leaders be more aware of the threats that's within our own boundaries. For those of you who've worn the uniform, you've taken an oath to protect our country from enemies both foreign and domestic. I believe that some of those people in Congress, some of those leaders of ours, could be considered a threat to the security of our nation, they being the enemy. And I believe anyone who would promote Islam in this nation has no concept that Christianity, back to Patrick Henry now and the fundamentals of our founding fathers, is not compatible with Islam. It never will be. You see, Christians believe that Jesus is the Son of God and that his word is the word that we should follow. Muslims, although they recognize the virgin birth of Jesus from Mary, they look at Jesus as being a prophet who did miraculous signs and wonders. But they do not look at him as being the Son of God. They don't look at him as being the Messiah. They believe that God cannot have a son. They don't believe that Jesus' death on the cross ever took place. It was a look-alike. Trust me, that's what it is in the Koran. It's right there. They really believe that. They also believe that there's no reason for someone to die for them on the cross because there's no issues about redemption. It is what it is. And Sharia law is their way of life. And for all those female Muslims who cry out about having a voice to be heard, an increase in women's rights like we heard in Tunisia during the riots or Egypt, they may get a temporary stay of having more rights. But when Islam takes over a nation, trust me, it will revert to Sharia law. And those rights that women think they have, they're going to lose them. Why? Because of the word fundamental. Once again, the Koran for the moderate is the same Koran as the so-called radical terrorists. There's no difference. These aren't just my words, but they're also the words of the son of a Hamas leader who converted over to Christianity. You don't have to believe me. Do your own math. Do your own homework. I implore you to do the research. And why am I bringing this up? Should I be elected your President of the United States, I would not allow any Muslim to be working in a federal government office. Now, you would call that discrimination, and you need to know that I feel this way, because I wouldn't want you to vote for me if you didn't feel the same way. I don't believe in giving a weapon in the hands of my enemy. I don't believe in killing my enemy simply because he is my enemy. But I don't believe in arming him either. I love this nation, and I don't want to see it fail. I don't want to see it fall. I don't want to see our Constitution become Sharia law. I recognize who my enemy is. Do you? Perhaps you think I am. Perhaps you think that I'm a hate monger, racist. Anyone who talks about something like this subject and the manner in which I am now is subject to being labeled as such. But that's all right. I don't mind sticking my neck out because I do love my nation. I don't judge a person because of their skin color or what nation they came from. And I usually don't judge anybody from the religious views that they have or they don't have. With this one exception, it's a catch-22. You may know a Muslim who has no desire to hurt anybody and wants to live in peace, never raising a sword in his entire life. But on the other hand, you see, Muslims can lie to the infidel and not be held accountable by their Allah, their God. They can deceive you as much as they want or can if they feel their life is in danger. In other words, they can tell you they're no threat when they are. And then the day comes when the wind changes and it looks like it's time to reveal their true intentions. It will be too late for us. Such is the plan of Islam. Global domination. It's not a hidden agenda. It's out there on the record. But people don't take religion very seriously. You see, and that's a mistake, because this isn't just a religion, as I mentioned earlier. This is a theocracy. They do not separate their religious beliefs from the government and their Sharia law. I believe this nation should return to the Christian principles in which our founding fathers recognized to be invaluable and an intricate part in keeping our republic. I believe that if we don't do this, we are not just in danger of losing the morality, the virtues that we used to hold so dear long ago. The threads of that fabric that held America in place. I believe our nation will fall if we turn our backs on God, if we turn away from Him and declare that, well, we're just going to do our own thing. We don't need Him. It's business as usual. We're more concerned about the economy and getting jobs, putting food on the table for my family. That's my main concern. I don't care about the Muslims. They don't bother me. They're not hurting anybody. They're just trying to live in peace. Yeah. And that silent majority, keeping their voices in check because they don't want to be judged, or they're afraid. The ones that feel that there's no opportunity to make a difference, that God has a plan and it's just going to work out the way it is. Here I am. I'm offering you an opportunity to make a difference. I'm Chance White, write-in presidential candidate for the United States, independent from the great state of Idaho. Thank you.